This is from our pal Gameworm. This is a loaded question. What do you guys think, or what's your opinion on weapon durability in Tears of the Kingdom? What do you
I
think, Al?
think it's different than Breath of the Wild. Like Breath of the
Yeah.
Wild, find a sword, you use it enough, it breaks. And I could understand why people thought that was frustrating. I thought it was okay, not a big deal. It kind of helped me, like, I don't know, utilize all my weapons more than just having a favorite. In Tears, it's different because you can fuse stuff. And I remember when we were first talking about Tears and we were both like, we don't really use fuse, but then like clearly the game is encouraging you to use fuse the further
Mm-hmm.
you play. It helps immensely. And I actually find it really fun. Like the weapon durability makes it so that you have to find creative ways to fuse. And people have found some like insane like attack hits with different fusing and like different weapons and different materials. And so I think that makes it like actually a lot more fun than it was in Breath of the Wild. Like the durability is worth it in this game because you can have fun being creative with your weapons.
Yeah, you pretty much took the words out of my mouth. I think it's significantly better than Breath of the Wild, and it
Yeah.
feels less annoying when your weapons break. Probably because fuse extends their like lifespan a little bit, or like you can
Hmm.
you can use a weapon, it'll start flashing red, then you can fuse it, and then it's almost like you get a second chance with that weapon.
Hmm.
But I feel like yeah, like I feel like it's a lot more like tactical, and you don't feel cheated when your weapon breaks, and sometimes that can happen in Breath of the Wild, and there's also the added element too of like the materials, and you kind of start to piece together like how long they last and stuff like that, so you can kind of start figuring out. So for example, like you've got like a million Gibdo parts after you do the Gerudo area, and so I was like, man, these are powerful, sweet. So I'm fusing them to swords, and they break in like 2 seconds, and
Right.
so it occurs to me that these are like a far better thing to fuse with an arrow rather
Right.
than like the sword, and that made me feel clever. It made me feel smart. And it was kind of like an experimenting, mixing, matching kind of thing where I found like I felt something that like I had something that really worked, and I don't think that you get that in Breath of the Wild, where I do think that like in Tears of the Kingdom, it's less egregious, and I feel like I mean the good thing too is that weapons, if you're fusing them, just generally last longer.
Hmm.
As well, so I think all around it is improved. I get why people are like upset that you still can break your weapons in Tears of the Kingdom, but like I do think that if you don't have that system, it's very possible that you pick up like a sweet sword in the first hour of the game and spend the next 200 hours just using that sword, which is,
Yeah.
it's, I mean, maybe that doesn't sound horrible to some players, but I think like a big part of, I mean, especially Tears of the Kingdom, is messing around with Fuse and finding like, that diversity in gameplay. So I understand why it's there, and I think that if it was going to be there, it's way better than it was in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I agree. I also want to point out that like aside from also like the hit points being improved and like the how long they last, also it's like really fun to play with the aesthetics. Like some of the Lionel stuff that you attach to swords is so cool looking. Like you got the really long like I don't know, kind of just sword looking thing and you fuse it with a sword and you got this like really cool long like curved sword or one of the antlers if you fuse it with like a great sword, then you got this cool like giant, it looks like you're carrying around a weird
Yeah.
uh I don't know, like piece of horn that looks like it could be a chandelier or something. I don't know, but it's so cool looking. So that was also really fun is like, yes, my weapons broke, but then I was like, okay, what else can I fuse? What else can I make look cool? What else can I make more powerful? You know?
Yeah.
It just made it a lot more fun.
There's a lot more like customization. I was gonna say custom ability, but that's not a word.
Mm.
Um, I was actually on Friday night. I went out for dinner with a couple friends of mine, and one of them is one of my friends. Her husband is like he's getting into the world of game development, and he's like a Zelda fan, but not a big Zelda fan. And he hasn't played Tears of the Kingdom, and he was like, like what's this game about? Like, is it good? If I've played Breath of the Wild, and like I actually pointed out Fuse specifically because I was like, if you like crafting and gameplay and like if that's like if your enjoyment of a game is weighted in those areas, like I think you could argue that like Breath or Tears of the Kingdom is one of the greatest games ever made. Like the amount of stuff you can do in this game and create and build and fuse. I mean, to your point, you have like swords that have like these antlers or Gleeok wings on them. Like it looks unbelievable. So like the amount of stuff that you can do is astronomical. So I mean, if you're like a gameplay head, like if that's your thing and everything else is kind of secondary, like this is probably one of the best games that you've ever played.
Yeah.
So it's pretty incredible. Okay, a couple cool questions here from Mar. What are your feelings about the lack of Triforce in Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom? Does it make it feel less Zelda to you? Does the unclear connection to the rest... Actually, we'll save that. Let's just, let's go to the first part there. What do you feel about the lack of Triforce in these games?
I mean, I did think it was odd in Breath of the Wild, and you see it kind of at the end, and you see it in like the architecture. You see like it carved into places on the floor, and etc. I don't think I really paid attention to missing it in Tears of the Kingdom because there was so much Zonai stuff going on that I was more interested in learning more about Zonai than Hylian lore with the Triforce. I was kind of like, ooh, this is new, this is exciting, I want to learn more about this lore, this power, etc. So I guess I didn't really pay attention to missing it that much, but I do agree that it still is kind of weird how it's like not a priority is not the right word, but not a focus in these games, because that is very Zelda-like. But I think I'm okay with it, because sometimes you just need a breath of fresh air, something new. I'm sure we'll get back to it in the future, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I felt like it didn't bother me at all in Tears of the Kingdom, like at all. And I feel like I remember when I played Breath of the Wild and finished it, I was like, oh, that's weird. There wasn't a single mention of the Triforce at all in that game. But even then, like I thought it was weird, but it didn't bother me because I mean, like you have your own self-contained world and story and everything like that going on in those games. So yeah, like I guess like it's like, well, like what else do you want to, do you want to revisit like the lore of the Triforce? We already know how it was created. We already know, the three goddesses. We know that story. We know that it splits up and it's chosen all of its champions across, destiny and fate and all that stuff. So like, yeah, I don't know. I guess like, other than just kind of being like a MacGuffin or like something that you have to go and acquire, like what does it add to the story? I'm not sure. I thought it was weird, but I also didn't miss it necessarily either. Yeah. Like it didn't not feel like a Zelda game because the Triforce wasn't there.
Yeah. And there's other games where the Triforce isn't a focus. Like I'm pretty sure Majora's Mask doesn't have a lot of Triforce talk in it. I mean, it's a sequel to Ocarina of Time, which was Triforce heavy. But I didn't miss it in Majora's Mask because I know it's there. I know it's present in the Zelda series and the Zelda lore, but I don't think I need it to be a focal point in every single game. So I'm okay.
I mean, like even like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, like those are, I'll put in quotations here, like those are like main story Zelda games, right? Where you learn about like the hero and Triforce and World of Hyrule, stuff like that. And like I don't think that they're overly, they don't spend a lot of time on the Triforce necessarily in those games, right? Like
yeah, but they're more present for sure than Breath of the Wild and Tears. Like in Twilight Princess, you got them on their hands. In Skyward Sword, you got them in the last temple. You got to find the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess Skyward Sword is a bad example because you literally get the Triforce, but like the duration of the game, I guess my point is it's not like it was building up this moment where it's like we got to find the Triforce, we got to like Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, Legend of Zelda. Those games are very much like the Triforce is your quest, like that's what you got to do. And I feel like it's okay to not have that in Breath of the Wild and in Tears of the Kingdom, and frankly any other Zelda game that needs it. Like the series is so established now that it's you can do whatever you want. Which leads us to our next question, actually, also from Mar. Does the unclear connection to the rest of the timeline and previously established lore bother you? I've heard a lot of longtime fans express frustration with that and say a return to the classics is in order, not just for a linear game instead of an open world, but also for a more traditional Zelda storytelling, specifically with a focus on the Triforce. No, it doesn't bother me. I'm not one of those guys. You know what? I hate the timeline, to be honest with you. I think it's kind of lame. And I'm not trying to like make it seem like I know it's important to some Zelda fans, and but I guess the thing about the timeline for me is like it's kind of one of those things that's like it's fun to do in like your own way. Like you could piece the clues together, and you can map out your own theories about it. But like when Nintendo officially came out and revealed like this is the timeline, I feel like that just like immediately took away all of the luster from the timeline talk. Like you had a little bit of discussion about it after, but I feel like it really died down like after Breath of the Wild came out. And it's one of those things where it's like, Nintendo clearly doesn't care about the timeline. So like why should we fans care about the timeline? And myself personally, I just like I don't know, I guess I feel like it just doesn't matter to me. Like I don't know how else to say it. So, like it doesn't impact like what's happening in the game I'm playing. And maybe if it did, then I would care more about it. But each game is really its own self-contained thing with just little Easter eggs and callbacks and stuff like that. And I like those. I feel like that's fine. But I'm not like if I'm playing Four Swords Adventures, I'm not looking for clues in the game to see when it takes place. Like that's just I think you're kind of looking for the forest through the trees at that point,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've always liked the timeline. I think it's cool. I really like being able to piece things together, and to see them visually and to be like, it makes sense why this belongs here. It makes sense why this belongs here. I always thought the breakdown into the 3 different timelines was cool. But when Breath of the Wild came out, I feel like I definitely kind of, I want to say like lost my interest in it. It was just more like, it kind of like died down a little bit or calmed down a little bit because I was like, okay, this kind of feels like its own thing. Yes, it references all the other, not all the other, but a bunch of the other games or instances of stuff that has happened. And that's okay with me. Like I was like, it takes place 10,000 years after one event that's still within Breath of the Wild's timeline. So to me, I was like, that is a lot of time, and you don't even know how much time before that first calamity happened the rest of the timeline. So for me, it's like way beyond the timeline, and I'm like, it's okay to be so far out there that it's its own thing at this point. And I was like, that's fine. In my brain, I think that's okay. I think the only thing that I've ever had an issue with lore and connections wise is between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, as we've talked in previous weeks. But I'll get over it.
Right.
It's okay. No.
I feel like that's, sorry to interrupt. I feel like that's a little bit different. Like that's a direct.
Direct sequel.
Yeah.
So that's why it bugged me there. But for the rest of the series, I'm like, it's okay to have you. In fact, it could be like a parallel time. Like it could just, our timeline is over here. It could be its own thing over here in its own pocket. And I'm okay with that. Like it's fine.
Yeah. I think a lot of people forget the series is called The Legend of Zelda. Legends don't have to fit necessarily into a tight connected box. Like there could be some gray area in there and like a little bit of he said, she said when you're explaining this this series of events and stuff like that. So one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
But you know what? I don't want to make it seem like I'm dismissing the people that do care about it and that are upset about it. I think that at least you can say with Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, that they offer you a lot of Easter eggs and discussable points. How about that for the timeline?
Yeah.
All right, this is from Corey Richmond.
Oh my god.
What's your personal take on all of the hero of blank outfits that you can find in the depths, along with stuff like the Majora's Mask, Zan's helmet, Phantom armor, etc.? Innocent Easter eggs or lore breaking. So as we just kind of said, I feel like these are like they're basically like Easter eggs. They're there. They are clearly an homage and a callback to previous games, and I'm totally fine with that. I don't know. I've never opened up like a chest, be like, oh wow, Majora's Mask. Oh no, an ancient evil is about to overtake me if I put this on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like to me it doesn't break any kind of lore at all. This is the same game where like Link's wearing a Nintendo Switch T-shirt as a pre-order bonus, right? So like, yeah, just innocent.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I'm kind of in agreement. Like, I think it's mostly like kind of Easter egg stuff, just callbacks to past games, especially in Breath of the Wild because they were like not DLC but amiibo locked.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like it's not even in game, but they changed that with tiers. So I just feel like it's more like with being able to customize what Link wears, it was probably Nintendo's way of saying like, hey, we understand we kind of got rid of the old do. Here's the old do if you want to wear it, and here's the different styles. It wasn't really more like an in-game lore type of thing. I know sometimes the descriptions are like said to be worn by the hero of time, and it's like maybe that somebody like just designed it after what the hero of time looked like from whatever book they read or something. You know what I mean?
Man.
I think this answers Corey's next question.
I was going to say you've got ESP because then let's just throw it out there right now. So his next question is, do you feel like there could be any possible in-world explanation for why that stuff all exists? And you just nailed it right there.
Yeah. There's clearly fashion in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom if Cece and her apprentices are any indication. Yeah. So people care about clothing, and maybe somebody opened a book and was like, oh, check out all these old hero garbs. I'm going to make them, you know?
I think that's exactly it. And again, goes back to the whole, like, it's called The Legend of Zelda. So, like, you've probably read about the Hero of Time. You've probably read about the Hero of Wind. You probably know about Zant or Majora's Mask or the Phantoms. And it's just like, maybe somebody built some armor as an homage to those stories or to those characters, real or fictional or whatever they may be in that world. But I think that's the answer right there. So like, I mean, really, like not that far fetched. I don't think. Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this clip and want to see more of the Zelda Cast, make sure to head over to your favorite podcast platform of choice and subscribe. There are over 200 episodes in the vault that will provide you with hundreds of hours of Zelda content for you to enjoy. You can listen to us when you're on a walk, fighting Ganon, trying to sleep, whatever. And if you want to see these shows as they happen, make sure to head over to twitch.tv/the Zelda Cast, where you can watch our beautiful faces talk about Zelda every single week. Don't miss out, and we'll see you next time.